It's the Year of the Garden, and where better to celebrate than Victoria, BC, the city of gardens.
Recorded on the traditional territories of the Lekwungen and Wasanich nations, this series examines local history, culture, and ecology over a nice cup of tea.
So put the kettle on and join us.
Welcome to Tea and Gardens,
A series where we drink tea and explore the gardens of Victoria, BC. Today we're at the Abkhazi Garden. This beautiful 1.4 acre property features a tea house, which is the former home of the Prince and Princess Abkhazi.
We've come here today to learn more about this captivating couple, explore the gardens, and have a chat over a cup of tea. Let's go!
So they were here over 40 years together developing this garden, and it was really quite a team. And so we like to call it the garden that love built, but partly in my heart, I feel it's the garden of peace. They did a lot of healing and working together, and it's just a really peaceful place to come.
To understand how this garden came to be, you have to know the story of the Abkhazis. Cherie Miltimore of the Land Conservancy was kind enough to fill us in.
Right now we're on the patio or the terrace of the Abkhazi house. It's called Abkhazi Garden after Prince Nicholas Abkhazi and his wife Princess Peggy Abkhazi. Peggy was born in Shanghai, China in 1902 to British parents. She had a good life, traveled a lot with them, and had a good education. By the time she's in her early 20s, she's studying to be a concert pianist in Paris. And that's where she meets the prince. The prince is invited over for dinner. And it's decided that the prince can escort her around the city. But why is the prince in Paris? His father was one of the founding fathers of the First Republic of Georgia. And in 1921, the Red Russians were moving in, and Nicholas was sent away for safety, and he ended up in Paris. And over the years, they kept in touch. And we'll speed up to, I guess, the Second World War. Nicholas is fighting for the French because he can't go back to his country of Georgia, and he's interned by the Germans. Peggy, who's living in Shanghai during that time, she gets interned by the Japanese. After the war, she comes back here. She had a very good friend here, and she bought this property. She had the fence put up, she had it cleared, hired an architect to develop the summer house you can see in the background there. And then she had a letter she needed to respond to. The prince had written her from Paris, and in that letter it said, "Will you meet me in New York sometime?" By September 7th, they were engaged to be married on the Empire State Building, and then they came back here, got married, and built this beautiful garden together, and we call it the garden that love built.
Cherie led us down from the patio, taking the same route that Peggy would have taken to visit her garden.
We are in the beautiful rhododendron woodland. The Abkhazis didn't want to start from scratch, so some of the rhodos they planted were already 50 years of age. And right now we're in a beautiful time because some have already come out and some are already gone, but we have the promise of new ones coming out. So it's just a really beautiful time to be here. Plus we have all this beautiful ground cover that you'll see as you walk through the garden. They were very involved with the Rhododendron Society. Peggy used a really big silver tray from her parents' wedding, and that's now a trophy that the Rhododendron Society will give out to an individual every year, and they get their name engraved on the back when they've done good work for the Rhododendron Society of Victoria. They work so closely with the Rhododendron Society that they have rhododendrons named after them.
Would you mind showing us?
Sure, I'd love to show you. This here is the Princess Abkhazi rhododendron. It's already been in bloom and it's finished for the year. When Peggy was older, sometimes she would take her lunch here and she'd sit on the rock. And she had dogs, she had Sheltie dogs, and I was told that sometimes she would throw her sandwich to the dog and the dog would eat it up. But one really neat thing our head gardener did, we had a new Princess Abkhazi rhododendron to plant in the garden, and she located it right by the rock here where Peggy used to sit, which I think is pretty cool. Apparently, the Prince Nicholas Abkhazi rhododendron did not survive, but we had some volunteers find where they could get a replacement. And so this is our Prince Nicholas Abkhazi rhododendron. This is a very special spot in the garden because it's where the ashes are of Prince Nicholas Abkhazi and Princess Peggy Abkhazi. And one time it was rocks that were straight up and down, but we've just angled 2 rocks to show what a special spot it is. Yeah. And so even though we're walking by, there's some sort of presence of them here with us. When Peggy came to Victoria after the war to heal, she and her friend Miriam Mackenzie would hike to the top of the property, and she decided to buy it. And one of the first buildings she had designed by John Wade was the summer house. And the summer house is very unique, but it fits within the landscape it's been put in. And after she went to New York and met up with the prince, they would come here every day and plan their garden, and they would have their breakfast and lunch in the summer house. And from this location, they'd look over their garden and think about how they would want to design it. And one of the major designs here is you look at the green grass and how it's flowing. It reminded Peggy of the Yangtze River. She visioned it to look like that and have this flow go down the hill. And the heather on the sides were like boulders. They embraced the natural features, so they embraced the Gary oak trees and the glaciated rock.
How did the Land Conservancy come to own this property?
Well, as the Abkhazis got older, they were worried about what would happen to this beautiful garden that they created. And so they contacted the city, hoping they would take it on in different church groups, but they wouldn't. So after Nicholas had died, Peggy decided to sell it to the head gardener. And he had it for a few years, but the upkeep of it was really expensive. The taxes were high. And so he, in 1999, decided to sell it. And unknowingly to him, he sold it to a developer. And then a big sign went up on the gate, front gate, saying that there was application for 12 townhomes. Well, when the community saw that, they said that wouldn't do, because even though the Abkhazis were private, they always kept their garden very open and people went through it, and people really wanted the garden saved. So they got in touch with the Land Conservancy, and the Land Conservancy, with community support, bought it in the year 2000.
We can see some people working here today. Can you tell us a bit about how the garden is maintained?
We're very lucky to have over 50 volunteers who volunteer to help talk about the story, greet people, and do the gardening, which is really important to keep it up for when visitors come. We could not manage without volunteers. They are the essence and heart of this place.
What do you think that says about the community here?
What it says about the volunteers is they recognize first the story and what's behind what built it and the beauty of the garden, and it should not be destroyed. It's part of the history, and it's an incredible gem with plants from all over the world and people who had been in hardship and suffered. And it's really a garden of peace and a garden of healing, and they did not want to see that destroyed. And a lot of our volunteers actually come here. It's good for their mental health to be working in the garden, but they also want to honor history and heritage. And they just have a strong belief in keeping this a beautiful place, as the Abkhazis did. One of our volunteers, Joe Harvey, was a plant enthusiast, and he cultivated the Bella Bella magnolia tree, which you see here. And it kind of has double blooms. It blooms before the leaves come, and then it has a second bloom. It's really a gorgeous plant to have in the garden. And you can buy them here. We do sell some by the front gate. So this is the Abkhazi Princess peony tree, and you can see that a bloom is about to come out, and they're absolutely gorgeous. And again, this was cultivated by Joe Harvey, our plant enthusiast. This is a peony tree out in bloom here. It's a rockeye. Now you might want a few questions for Jackie. Jackie, can we have a word with you? So this is our lovely head gardener, Jackie.
Jackie has been the head gardener at the Abkhazi Garden for 3 years. We asked her why the garden is important to Victoria.
Well, environmentally, we have the Garry Oaks here, so that's like a really key part of this garden. Garry Oak woodlands are really important to this area, so preserving those is one of the key elements to this garden. And also the camas, so like all the native plants, we do have quite a lot here, so that's quite key. And then also preserving the vision that the Abkhazis had, so of creating something that speaks to their history and then also sort of speaks to the natural lay of the land here with the bedrock and what have you, and views and vistas across over the water there too. Recently, in the last few years, we being very conscious of the amount of water that we use in the area, trying to introduce more drought-tolerant plants. One of the key things was this lawn. We've introduced microclover into the lawn, so that actually stays greener, easier to manage, needs less mowing, and it is more drought-tolerant, so it doesn't need as much water. Also, whatever greenery we remove from the garden, so we compost ourselves, so we have a whole area, and we have volunteers come every Tuesday, a group of guys who deal with composting, so they chip everything up, and we reintroduce everything into the garden. So we reuse, don't use any harmful sprays or anything like that. Everything is organic. Try to keep it as natural as possible. Our little group here, you can see they all get on really well together. It's quite we have a lot of fun, and it definitely has a community feel. We all have our coffee breaks and what have you, and have a good old chat, and we all have a real can-do sort of mentality. They'll try anything, they'll do anything. We've had ones that are willing to get into the pond and even swim in the pond with the turtles and do weeding, get totally immersed. We're all sort of sticking up for each other. We're all doing things together. Everyone gets along. Yeah, it's quite fun.
Sounds really nice.
Couldn't do anything without the volunteers, really. Not much would get done without them.
We then headed back up to the tea house to speak with the owner and operator, Barb Gunn.
It's a beautiful garden. It's lovingly maintained by volunteers. I cannot appreciate them enough. It is amazing the work these people do for free. The hours, the care they put into it. And the structure of the garden is so interesting. It's a little gem. Like, you don't find things like this. It's so interesting, the shapes and the colors and the different plant varieties. And it has a sophistication and a refinement to it. And so I think that's why it matches well with afternoon tea, because it's a serene pastime where it's convivial, you meet people and you catch up. It's a very calm endeavor, and the garden exudes that.
Bob generously invited us for afternoon tea.
This is our afternoon tea tower. On the bottom we have cucumber and cream cheese with arugula on whole wheat, egg salad with tarragon on marbled rye, Abkhazi Garden vegetable quiche. We have petit croissant with ham and cheese, cheddar cheese, and smoked salmon profiteroles. On the second level, we have cheddar and dill scones and currant scones with house-made clotted cream and house-made strawberry preserves. And on the third level, we have strawberry curd meringue tarts, Eccles cakes, chocolate pave, and lavender madeleine. The lavender is actually from the garden. We make madeleines. We also make lavender jelly. There's lots of things that lavender goes in the garden, in the tea house.
And the scone recipe was your grandmother's?
The scone recipe was my grandmother's, yes. We grew up eating that. Yeah, it was lovely.
And I want to chime in that I often see people leaving the tea house, or they've had one of the scones and they just rave about it. Best scone they've ever had.
It's going to be a taste experience, darling. High tea is generally, not anymore, but it used to be a main meal served on a high table. So it goes back to the tea time. Mm-hmm. Come home for your tea. in Britain, which was the main dinner meal.
Yeah.
So, and then the hoteliers got a hold of it and they just fancied it up. They tarted it up. So
low tea?
Yeah,
it was served on a low table,
Mm-hmm.
like, like a coffee table, a low table, and high tea came on a table that you sat at with chairs and cutlery.
Oh, that's interesting.
So all the tea here is from Silk Road.
All the tea is from Silk Road, and Daniela Kubelik, who is the owner of Silk Road, she developed a blend specifically for the tea house, for the garden, Royal Abkhazi blend, and it features elements of it's a black tea that features bergamot and vanilla, trying to bring in some of the flavors that Nicholas and Peggy would have recognized as part of their heritage.
There was a visitor the other day, and when she was younger and Peggy lived here, she had two little kids she would bring, and Peggy would actually give them milk and cookies.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That's very sweet.
This room was the main living area of the Prince and Princess when they built this house. There was the walls are clad with Baltic white birch, and the ceiling is shaped the way it is because Peggy was a concert pianist and had it designed this way for acoustics. The grand piano sat in this corner, and she played frequently. And it was quite modest for a prince and princess, but it was very lovely.
And did they drink a lot of tea?
No, apparently they drank coffee. Coffee was their preferred beverage. Coffee and martinis, apparently. We have Georgian people who make a pilgrimage to come here because it's where their prince lived. He's still a very vibrant figure to them. And even though he's been dead, 25 years now, I guess. But when they come in and they stand in the foyer and they look at this room, they cry. Like, for real, they cry because it looks like a traditional home that he would have grown up in. Yeah, so it's very special. Like, it's a very special place.
Yeah.
We've had the ambassador of Georgia to Canada come and give several visits, and he sees the garden as a shared heritage between Canada and Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
So how did this become a tea house?
I was looking for a business opportunity, and the Land Conservancy was looking for some income for the property. My business plan was originally to open a coffee shop, but I came to look at this, and I was standing on the patio out there, and I thought, oh, no, tea house. So that's how it was born.
What is your personal relationship to tea?
Well, I grew up with a Scottish mother, so I've been drinking tea as long as I've been alive. It's got to be good, strong black tea. I'm not into herbal teas or green teas so it's been part of my heritage and culture for my whole life. Yeah.
For me, tea is many things. It is family. Like most of my siblings, I have 5, all drink tea and a lot of tea all day long. But I have veered off. I love the green tea. I love the herbal teas. I don't like regular tea with milk. But it's also a social time. And certainly you see that here. People sit around and it slows you down. And certainly in winter, it's a cozy time because it's always cool. So you make yourself a cup of tea and it just warms you up and makes you feel good. So I really like tea. And I'm enjoying some peppermint herbal tea today.
Angel water, yeah.
I'm enjoying angel water. It's very good. And you're enjoying?
Jewel of India. Good, strong black tea.
There there will be bees in the garden. Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, there's a company in Machosen called Bees Please. And so we're getting 2 hives here in the garden. And at the end of the season, we'll have 10 pounds of honey that we can use in the tea house. Yeah.
10 pounds.
10 pounds of honey. I'm just looking forward to the spoils at the end.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah. Abkhazi is special, though, as a garden because it's not a show garden, and yet there are lots of things in the garden that are unique and rare. Plants that you don't see elsewhere. I would say almost an intellect's garden. Master horticulturists come here and are blown away because of the variety and the...
It's a garden of form and texture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, certainly with the rhodos, there's lots of blossoms right now. But
And you mentioned this is known as the garden that love built. So with that in mind, how do you feel when you come to this space to work?
Oh, I feel very, very privileged to come here to work. I mean, to own a business in a beautiful, serene place like this is really a gift. It's and Peggy and Nicholas have such a special story, like Cherie said, with they had privilege and hardship in their lives. They lived through a world war and they found each other again after that. You can't make that up. And to be in the place that they created out of their love for each other, they poured their hearts and souls into building and creating this place. It's a privilege to be here.
I mean, when they reunited after the war in New York City, she met him on September 4th. And by September 7th, they're engaged to be married on the Empire State Building. He was 47 and she almost 44, and the timing was just right. And then they came back here and got married and worked together to create this beautiful garden. And I know that I'll come to the garden to visit volunteers who do different things and or welcome visitors at the gate. And then later on when I go home, I thought, I'm feeling better. What happened? Mm-hmm. And I think it's just having come to the garden and being in this space.
Yeah. I can feel that. Yeah, it's beautiful here. Thank you to the entire team at the Abkhazi Garden.
If you want to learn more, listen to the Tea and Gardens podcast. Our episodes feature extended interviews, and they're available on all popular podcast platforms. You can also find us on social media at Tea and Gardens YYJ.
Thank you for watching, and see you next time.